Hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Bianca, and today I am joined by my furry friend Milo. And today I just somehow came to a realization that we are already in the second half of 2022. Like, what the heck?
Milo, are you aware that it's already July? Clearly, she doesn't care. Whoop.
Milo?
And I respect that.
Milo. Milo, you didn't show your butt to camera like that, Milo. Okay, so where was I? Yes. The point is, time flies. I'm already 23 years old, but I feel like I'm gonna be turning 24 really soon. Come to think about it, gosh, my 23-year-old self was actually really different from my 20-year-old self. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that this is something completely normal and to be expected. So little did I realize like how 3 short years can do a lot to changing the person that I am today as I just gather a little bit more life experiences across these 3 years. There were a number of things that I took these 3 years to learn. Well, for some of them, I have to admit that I secretly wish I internalized at a much younger age. Okay, like if time machines ever exist, there are essentially 8 key pieces of advice that I would have shared with my 20-year-old self. And I'm going to just talk about them through 2 videos so that they are much more digestible for anyone who's watching this. Okay, Milo just hopped onto the table again. Milo, you're not the center of the universe sometimes, you know. Well, in case of anything, I hope that there's something you could learn from what I have to say to my younger self, or at the very least, you can enjoy the presence of Milo the cat. Come on, Milo. Come on. You good sport. But okay, let's get right onto it. Okay, so the first piece of advice I would have given to my younger self would be to just carry a notebook and a pen wherever you go. For some context, I used to study biochemistry at university, and it was really through my degree program where I started to pick up note taking as a serious habit. This brings me to say, I really actually have to give physical notebooks a lot of credit. And the main reason for that is because unlike those note-taking apps that you get on your smartphones, physical notebooks with blank pages basically come with no predefined structure. For that reason, I find physical notebooks to be a really great tool for anyone. Oh, come on, Milo. Okay, so like for anyone to just go absolutely crazy with their brain dump, like just pour out their messy thoughts and just, spontaneously scribble down anything that just comes to their mind. Yeah, the point is, you just write anything. Oh, Milo. You just basically write anything down. Sorry about that. My cat is sometimes very spontaneous with regards to how much attention she wants at any certain point in time. But back to the point. Maybe it's just me, but I personally feel like writing by hand allowed me to just absorb information much better. So I end up learning far more efficiently just writing by hand as opposed to using digital tools. I could just be a little old school, or I probably just get less distracted when I'm not on my phone, but at the end of the day, it just works. Regardless, the main takeaway from this advice is for you to just build a habit of recording everything you observe religiously. And carrying a physical notebook and pen wherever you go would really help a lot in making that process easier. Ultimately, the main goal for you is to just build a valuable source of information where you can refer to in the future when you're trying to connect the dots for something. Because trust me, you can never really know how a seemingly insignificant information that you recorded one day could actually make a very big impact on, let's just say, a decision that you're going to make. And since it is a physical notebook, you would never have to worry about whether there's internet connection or whether you need to charge and make sure the battery is not close to zero every now and then. But if carrying a smartphone works best for you, so be it. Just do what works best for you to capture information quickly and frequently. Oh, hi Milo, you're back again. Okay. Alright, she wants attention again. Okay, Milo, come on. Okay, come on, Milo. Have a seat with me. Oh, that's rude. Well, where was was I? So the next piece of advice I would have is to practice effective communication. Yes, Milo, I do mean effective communication. And to just briefly understand what I mean by effective communication, well, Coursera actually did a pretty good job at explaining this. So according to Coursera, effective communication is basically the process of exchanging ideas, thoughts, opinions, knowledge, and data so that the message is received and understood with clarity and purpose. So that when we communicate effectively, both the sender and receiver feel satisfied. And basically, communication occurs in many forms, including verbal and non-verbal, visual, written, and listening. It can occur in person, on the internet, like on forums, social media, and websites, over the phone, through apps, calls, or video, or by, well, snail mail. With that brings us to ask, why is this such a big deal? Like, why should we even care about communicating effectively? Well, I'll put it this way. Words matter a lot. Yes, Milo. Words matter a lot. And when you enter the real world, it doesn't matter whether you're self-employed or working a full-time job at a corporate, or if you're just trying to just hang out with your friends or family or even with your pet. You gotta interact with people if you just want to get something done. Okay, the problem is we're human beings, so this means that miscommunication can happen, and this could sometimes lead to unintended consequences or even sour relationships. Ideally speaking, we don't want that to happen. So practicing effective communication would just allow you to articulate yourself clearly to others and therefore become a much more effective collaborator in the long run. With that, some of the skill sets that I believe would be necessary for all of us to just acquire as early as you can in your life would be things like empathy, the ability to listen actively, as well as different forms of non-verbal communication techniques. But most importantly, one of the biggest learning takeaways that you gotta internalize at a young age would be what's obvious to you may not necessarily be obvious to others. So it's really vital for us to not just assume that people know everything about a certain topic if you ever want to become an effective communicator. Built on that case, another important advice I would have for my younger self would be, for the sake of effective communication and for my overall well-being in the long term, it is important to just learn how to manage your emotions as well as express them appropriately depending on the context. Personally, I feel that society hasn't emphasized enough on how important this is. And I would also say that it is oftentimes an area neglected by many, and at certain points in my life, I know that I wasn't giving my emotions the attention it deserves. I hate to admit that, but it's definitely one of the mistakes I'm not proud of. Like, to my 20-year-old self, as much as how rational you think you are, we cannot completely escape our emotions as they are a core part of the human experience. But that doesn't necessarily mean that emotions are a bad thing. In fact, I would actually argue that emotions are a really useful tool for us when we finally develop a healthy relationship with them. Because on one hand, letting strong emotions to unnecessarily creep into a certain interpersonal setting, such as a professional context, can actually, yes, invite trouble. But on the other hand, your emotions, once properly managed, is actually the key factor that makes you a better friend, a better colleague, and a better family member, or just a better human being in general. So, long story short, I would say that it is important for us at an early age, ideally, to just recognize that we have different emotions evolutionary hardwired into us for a good reason. Developing self-awareness would, in my opinion, be an excellent way to manage them. So do what needs to be done in order to achieve that. Get a personal coach, go to therapy, take up classes on, say, psychology. Do whichever that works best for you. And recognize that there's just absolutely no shame in that. In fact, I would even dare say, make this a priority. Because learning how to manage your emotions properly has actually a real long-term impact on your health, whether it is physical or mental, and it also helps you to maintain a certain level of decorum that is necessary if you ever want to just thrive in the real world. For my fourth and final piece of advice that I'd like to share in this video, it's probably the most un-Asian thing I have ever said, but it's also one of those like I've said it once and I will say it again in the future kind of advice. Viewer discretion is advice, but okay, take risks while you're still at school. Yes, I'm serious. Take risks while you're still at school. Yes, Milo, I do mean it. Take risks while you're still at school. Okay, maybe not exactly the go skydiving without a parachute kind of risk, but the give everything a go just because you're young and curious kind of risk. Right, hear me out on this, but I personally hold the opinion that the whole point of us going to school is basically for us to learn as much as we can about the world we live in, as well as just develop the critical skill sets that we need to thrive in such a society by the time we graduate. Again, maybe it just so happens to be the environment that I was brought up in, but a common thing I notice about myself as well as a lot of my peers is that we are sometimes a little too risk averse. Whether it is because we, fear failure, or we just really want to project that we are good at everything. But when you come to think about it, your school days are literally the perfect time for you to just try out everything and anything, because it is supposed to be a safe space for you to just make mistakes without having to fear facing really severe consequences. Well, okay, provided that the mistakes you make are still legal mistakes. Seriously, give things a go. You're not expected to be perfect on day one itself, so it can be like an entrepreneurship project you are curious about, a module that you are not used to taking, but it's just something that seems to pique your interest, or it can even be a club leadership role that you feel really passionate about. Again, trust me on this, but scoring a bad grade from time to time is not that big of a deal, so you really have nothing to lose. And regardless of the outcome, it is, after all, a win-win situation. Because if you manage to get exactly what you wanted out of that situation, that's a success. And if you didn't, you actually still learned something valuable from it. And that's also a success. With that, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. So those are basically the first 4 pieces of advice that I would have basically lectured my 20-year-old self if I ever get to go back in time. But oh well, can't do much about that. So I hope that my tips gave you something to ponder on regardless of which stage of life you happen to be at. So if this sort of video interests you, or you happen to appreciate my cat's stage presence, well, do consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell icon. If you're interested, I've also made another video dedicating to how writing has also made a huge difference in my personal life, and I would say that it's probably also something I would have recommended my 20-year-old self to do if, as I said, if I ever get to go back in time. Till then, I wish you a great day ahead, be kind to yourself and others, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye-bye! Come on, Milo. Come on. Say bye-bye to camera. Come on, Milo. Say bye-bye. Come on. Say bye-bye. Look at camera. Say bye-bye. Come on, look. Camera's there. Say bye-bye. Okay, alright. Okay, I'll give you some treats later, okay? But just to give you some context, this is how hard it can be to shoot a thumbnail with her. It's that hard. Okay, but we all know that we still love you. She knows that. Okay, alright. Bye guys.